I used to think that marriage was a failed institution.
Things could be communication, finances, infidelity, compatibility of values. But apart from that, couples are going through emotional breakdown.
I have dealt with more than 1,500 cases. I have actually given annulments for almost 1,000 couples during the time that I have been a judge.
And speaking of success, we have a couple with a very successful 18-year-long marriage. So, Melissa, why don't you tell us how you all met and what was the process of courtship like and how has it been being married for 18 years? Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Heart Rock Cafe, where we have heartfelt conversations on the solid rock of faith over a cup of hot coffee. We're continuing today on our interesting, riveting topic, is marriage a failed institution? And joining us today is Father John Abraham, Melissa and Preetham D'Souza, and three lovely young girls, Sheila, Martha and Maria. And we're going to be picking up where we left off last time.
I just wanted to ask Melissa her experience, like when she had to live a job that she was working for all the while and all her career and everything, and came down to Preetham, right, the man of her life. How easy was it? And right now, you being a homemaker, how different the life is right now, so that we understand how we can as well accustom ourselves to that life. And it's just not the career, but when it's family, that is more important than anything else.
So when I was discerning, what I want to see in my spouse, like Father shared, okay, he needs to be a man of faith, a God-fearing man. And yes, he needs to have a job, but it didn't matter to me as long as he was able to give me a shelter and give me food on the table. So these are the two important things. And the third thing would be, a good family, because I think family, is where an individual is formed. And if the family is a good family, then I'm sure that the individual I'm marrying to also has those values, with him, carries on those good values in him. So these are the three things I was looking for. And addressing your question, so when we decided, okay, we're going to get married and I have to move shift countries, I was willing to do that because I decided that I was going to get married. I had no restrictions, when having conversations with Preetham on, whether you should work, whether you shouldn't work. There was nothing like that. So if I wanted to continue working, which I did after coming back here, I did continue working after getting married. Though it was difficult initially to find a good job, I was able to find one and continue. And the minute we after we conceived and I delivered our first child, for about 6 months, it was, as a mother, it was really difficult for me to continue working. Okay, so I had no restrictions from my spouse, whether I should continue working, but everything was left up to me. And this one final day, keeping it in prayer, I decided, no, my calling, is to take care of this child and to build her and to build this family. So that's how I decided, okay, I'm going to put down my papers and stop working and take care of my home. And there were times when we struggled with finances, but through the thick and thin of all of it, God took care of us, and we had to cut down on certain things. So through our discussions, through our communication, through understanding each other, what is required, what is not required for our family, we were able to manage finances too. So that's where I took a stand.
I think that's a really good thing to hear from somebody who's married, that you had the option whether you wanted to work or not. Preetham gave you that option. It was not taken away from you. And also that you chose your home and you're happy in your decision. I think right now, the times that we're in, there's a lot of pressure on women to be independent and have their own careers going, and there is this subliminal pressure that if you are not working, then there is not as much value in like caring for your family, which I think is really unfortunate, because having a family is a beautiful thing. So that's a great point that you made. I'm glad we could bring that up. So it sounds like a lot of getting into marriage has negotiation in it, and this reminds me of a really fun clip from this 90s sitcom called News Radio. And I think we can probably play a little bit of that clip now and watch that.
Melanie, I'm single, you're single. What do you say we get married?
Well, I'm glad you finally decided on the direct approach.
Yeah, well, I'm a businessman at heart.
As am I. What's your offer?
Single rich male seeks matrimony.
Primary residence?
Westchester County.
Would you be open to considering a secondary residence in Manhattan?
Central Park West.
South.
Done. Time spent together.
8 hours, 5 days a week.
7 hours, 12 hours weekends.
55 hours aggregate, specifics to be determined later.
I'm amenable to that. Children.
1,
3.
2.
Done. But one of them has to be a male.
I'll see what I can do. Vacations.
December, Hawaii.
June, the vineyard.
June, fine, but Hawaii.
Nope, the vineyard.
Is that a deal breaker for you?
I'm afraid so.
Me too. Well, we gave it a shot.
I'm sure you'll find a better match.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, that was a really fun clip, but kind of shows what kind of negotiations could go down, right, when you're looking for a person. And for somebody who's young and looking for a partner, sometimes it's a really simple reason where things can fall apart. So if it's so simple for things to fall apart, then why should we, as youth, even consider marriage? So I think to address that, maybe we can talk about what are the reasons marriages are breaking down right now, Father?
You're right. The reasons why marriages are breaking down, they all boil down, if not all, 95% of them boil down to an invalid consent that the parties make to one another. And in the invalid consent, from the number of cases, the number of grounds that are given for it, the very first thing that comes to my mind, the maximum number of grounds, is an immaturity on the part of one or the other. In canon law, we call it as lack of due discretion of judgment regarding the rights and obligations of marriage, which are to be given by the parties to one another. The man does not realize that these are his duties. As a husband, these are his duties. For example, he has to work, earn money to look after the family. The wife has to realize that one of her duties is to accept children lovingly from God and to bring them up according to the laws of God and the church. That lack of maturity comes from a young age. When people who are young get married, the maturity is very less, is very low. Sometimes I hear about the woman telling, "Father, he sits at home and drinks all day. He drinks all night. He calls all his friends. He has parties every day, but he doesn't go to work. They're always partying and partying. I have to go to work. I have to bring the salary. I have to take care of all of them." And then when I tell him, "Why don't you do your job?" He says, "Come on, you are there. Why should I do? You earn and come, we'll all enjoy." Well, this is a kind of classic immaturity on the part of the husband. The second ground that comes in my mind is a kind of inability of the person to fulfill the promises he has made. How does that inability come about? The first thing that is the man is so possessive of his wife, he doesn't want her to see anyone, to talk to anyone, to go to the neighbor's house, nothing. She should be at home and look only at him and his face. He's so possessive of her. There are so many cases I come across where the man has ordered his wife not even to talk to her own brothers. You can't even talk to them. Quite a number of times I've heard about how the cell phone is confiscated and she has no way of communicating to anyone. It's an extreme sense of possessiveness. This is a kind of psychological inability. If you're so possessive of your wife, you're destroying her. And your marriage cannot succeed. The second psychological problem that comes among many spouses is the over-possessive quality. He's so possessive of her that he doesn't give her freedom for anything. And the over-suspicion, extreme suspicion of the husband for anything. I know of a case which was a kind of classic one. If the girl looks up when she's walking, he's complaining, why are you looking up, looking at everybody going on the road? If she looks down and walks, why are you looking down? Is there somebody who's watching you, who's giving some signs and symbols to you not to look?
Oh my gosh.
Then she sits in the bus and is going. He looks at her and says, oh, you're eyeing the driver in that rear mirror. Wow. It is so bad. And you know how many times I come across cases where the husband locks up the wife in the house and goes to work. He comes and opens it only when he comes back. He says, you don't have to come out. You don't have to meet anyone because I don't know what you're doing when I'm gone. Well, this kind of extreme suspicion. A third psychological problem that comes to mind, extreme anger. For any small thing, the fellow flares up. If there's no proper salt in the food, he throws the plate with the food on the wall. Says, what kind of food have you prepared for me? He's talking over the phone and he's angry at someone. He bashes his hand on the window and breaks the glass. He breaks the phone. Wow, this is an extreme anger. And after that, 5 minutes after that, he's so repentant. He kneels down and says, please forgive me. I won't do it again. Well, if you're living with a spouse like that, it's impossible. And then, unfortunately, us human beings, we have got so many personality disorders. There are 9 types of personality disorders that are there in the book, psychology book, where people can have disorders. We sometimes think that, oh, everybody is normal, normal. But no, even the president of a country could have a psychological disorder, which you can very clearly see. The way he is behaving, the way he is talking, the way he's a psycho. Well, there are people who are abnormal also. There are people. Now, there's one question that the Holy Father, John Paul II, brought out in 1988 in the allocation that he gave to the Roman Rota, that means the judges of the Roman tribunal. He said, nowadays, all the tribunals are giving an affirmative answer to invalidity of marriage because of a psychological reason. In one diocese in one country, there were 380 cases that came that year for annulment, and all 380 cases were decided on one ground, and that is inability. They are unable to fulfill the obligations of marriage. Well, he said, if you look at it from a certain point, every one of us have got some kind of inability. Will that be a ground to annul a marriage? Then he goes on to say, we have to follow a Christian anthropology. Maybe Dr. Freud says we are all having some inabilities. Maybe some other Jung psychologist says all of us are less than normal. Everybody, in some angle or the other. But there's a Christian anthropology which Pope John Paul II said follow. And the Christian anthropologists, we may all have some kind of inabilities, but we must have at least the minimum which is required for marriage. You may not be perfect in it. You may not be perfect in being a calm and patient person, but do you have a minimum of that quality? Maybe you are suspicious, but that should be only at a minimum level. Maybe you are possessive. It should be at a minimum level. When it goes to a very high level, then you become incapable of fulfilling your obligation of marriage. So all these 3 grounds which I told you now, or rather 2 grounds that I told you now, are in Canon 1095. Canon 1095, number 2 and number 3. Number 2 says, lack of due discretion regarding the rights and obligations to be given and accepted in marriage by the spouses. And the third one is inability to fulfill the obligations of marriage due to reasons of a psychological nature. India has one more, reason which comes quite often. Forced marriage.
Yeah.
The girl says, I was forced to marry by my father, by my brothers. I could not say no to it. If I say no, they say, get out of the house. Where am I going to go? I have to accept it. There was one case where it was a typical case. The girl came to the church. She was crying there before entering the church. The priest is coming from the altar down to welcome them into the church, and this girl is crying. She had no parents. Her elder brother is the one who arranged the whole marriage. He caught that girl's hand, took her aside to the compound wall, gave her 2 or 3 slaps, hard slaps, said, shut your mouth. You have to come and agree. Wipe your tears. And she came and gave the consent. I'll accept. Yes, will you take this man in marriage? Yes, I take it. She says, I'll show you the video where my brother takes me. He says, I've spent so much of money on you. My parents were not there. So I did everything for you. And in the last minute, you're telling I don't want? She says, not last minute. I told you from the beginning. No, we have chosen. See, there is a kind of, the parents, or at least those who are in charge, take it as a kind of insult to them when the girl says no. I say yes. How can you say no? The father thinks it's his right to choose the person for the girl. No, I have given my word not to the boy but to the boy's father. And so you have to marry that. So there are lots of times in India. This one is really unheard of when I go abroad. I was working in the tribunal of Westminster in England. And there one case came of forced marriage. And the judges asked me, Father, is it true that they can do like this in marriage? That they can force a girl to get married to a man?
Oh, wow.
I said, yes, Father, it is true. Oh, God. How is that possible? She's grown up. She's an adult. And how can they come and do it? I said, yes, that is the situation in India. And not just 1 or 2. There are so many marriages where the girl is forced to get married. Only some come out in the open. The others, they just swallow it and continue. It's a matter of pride for parents. So that is another reason why. Then nowadays, the very important ground is, it is called as simulation in marriage. Canon 1101. Simulation in marriage is, outside you are telling, I promise to be faithful to you till the end of my life. But in his heart, he is thinking, oh, that girl whom I know, that neighbor girl, I've already been a friend with her. I will continue that. He tells, I take you for my whole life, good or bad, till death do us part. And the very first week, when the girl does something which he doesn't like, better you do it properly, I'll divorce you otherwise. I'll throw you out of the house. Where have the promises gone that I take you for life when you are telling her I will? And it's not just as a joke. It is serious. It starts right from the beginning of marriage, and believe me, it goes on even for months and years together. He keeps on threatening her. The girl keeps on threatening to the man. You don't do this, I'm going back to my mother's house. You don't do this, I'll never come back here. And then he has to go on his knees and call her back. And because he went on his knees, he brings her back home and gives her a tight, wrap. Because he begged in front of everyone. So there is one thing called this simulation. A very important point is money. They have promised me to give 10 lakhs. Not directly, indirectly. And if that money doesn't come after marriage, they tell her, go home and bring the money. Otherwise, don't come. Go home and don't come if you can't bring the money. Which means, I married the money, not you. I want that more than you. It's another way, it's a simulation. Simulation against the indissolubility of marriage. I want the money, otherwise I don't want you. So there is this ground of simulation wherein outwardly, in life, we are simulating many times. When you see somebody whom we don't like, you say, hi, how are you? So glad to meet you. In your heart, you're saying, why the hell this fellow came in front of me? I never wanted to see him at all. Early in the morning, I have to look at his face. We are simulating like that. When somebody is not done very well, we congratulate and say, very good, I've never seen such a wonderful way it has been done. We have to simulate in this world, because otherwise you can't really survive. And people carry that on into marriage. They want the money more than the girl, and they want to be unfaithful more than faithfulness. and their promise of permanence in marriage and indissolubility of marriage is and the fidelity in marriage is thrown to the winds. Well, that is another. At least I've told you these three main reasons wherein people come for asking for annulment of marriage. That canon 1095, lack of discretion of judgment and the inability to fulfill obligation of marriage, simulation in marriage, where what you intend in the heart is not what you really tell out in the promise, and a kind of force and fear wherein parents or others in good heart, in a good intention, but they force them to do the wrong thing.
Right. And when I was looking at the statistics, right, it said that abroad or worldwide, usually women will initiate divorce, right? But in India, it's predominantly the men. And there was also this note which said there's a probability that now like divorces or separation is rising because women have access to it, because it's not like the problems weren't there before. It's just that, the ostracizing of the woman, the black mark that you get, the lack of family support, the lack of financial independence, all of these things are such factors. So it brings me to my question, which is, were our marriages worse off now than they were before, or do people just have an easy out?
I personally think that marriages always had problems like the ones that we are facing today. Yeah. The world has not changed so much that all the problems have changed. But there are some aspects of marriage because of which marriage problems, in a certain sense, they become larger. Yeah. One aspect for which marriages come for annulment is, I can manage on my own.
Right.
I don't need my husband. I'm earning or I'm going to earn sufficient for me and my kid. Many women, even in the court, say, I don't want any maintenance, I don't want any alimony. I'll take care of my kid. So, education of the girl, good employment for the girl enhances the possibility to go and ask for an annulment or a divorce. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Because if it was not a good thing, in the past, the woman would bear it, even if not grin, she'll cry and bear it all through her life. Because if I leave and go, who's going to look after me? Right. Who's going to look after my children? Right. How can I educate them? That was always the complaint of women who were in failed marriages. And so the men used to take total advantage, drink, come and beat the wife, beat the children, make the house really a hell. But the girl will still stick on. Where can I go if I leave him?
Right.
Another point which I wanted to tell you also, which comes to my mind, is alcoholism is one more big reason why marriages fail. The alcoholism is such a disease that it grows and grows and grows, and it's almost impossible to make an alcoholic come back to normal life. Even if you did your level best and you brought him to normal life, one glass after that, he goes back to the what he left. So alcoholism, I don't know, there is no cure for it, but you can at least try to avoid it. But alcoholism is a very big enemy of a happy family. But other reasons why women come for divorce, I'm sure Preetham is going to say. I don't know if you take up civil cases.
I really don't deal much with family matters, but my exposure to understanding the problems in marriage is more from a community perspective. I'm part of a community where I have the opportunity of talking. We both of us have the opportunity of talking to couples and living our marriage with them. So, in the community we have a whole lot of singles as well. And as we lead them in a life of chastity towards discerning their vocation, we have opportunities of going ahead and discussing these issues with them as to why they're choosing what they're choosing. And be it the singles or for that matter married couples who've been married for several years. I've come across that when I go and ask them, why did you get married? A lot of times I get answers such as, because I wanted a companion. I wanted to live a happy life. I wanted to find joy. I wanted to find fulfillment, satisfaction. What are the reasons you remember, Millie? A whole lot of those reasons. And I don't fault them for that, because really speaking, for the first, if you'd asked me the same question for the first 5 years of my marriage, I probably would have given you the same reason. And I'm getting married because I want to find fulfillment. I want a companion. I want to, just like I told, I want someone to go down on my knees. I wanted her to go down on my knees for me. So, of course, it was objective. But end of the day, what I realized was the key, at least for a Catholic marriage, or the reason why we come across issues with regard to marriage, was when they entered into marriage, they really did not think through as to why they're getting married, which I did not do for the first 5 years of my marriage, like I said. But then I came to realize after a point in time, after that, once I started reading as to why I even got married and what marriage was about, what sacrament of marriage was about, what the church speaks about marriage and so on, I had a whole lot of transformation of my mind, and it led to a renewal of my marriage itself. There was one article very specifically that I wanted to mention, which had a profound impact on my life. And that article was not written by any of the doctors of the church, or was not written by Pope John Paul II or any of the theologians. It was written by a simple young man who was discerning whether he wanted to get married or not. He wrote an essay, a simple essay. It was not more than 1 page or 1.5 pages. And the title of the essay was "Marriage is Not for Me."
Oh, wow. That's
Okay.
what helped you.
What do you understand when you see a title such as that? Is that probably he's not ready for marriage? Marriage is not for me. He's not fit for marriage, and that's probably he should look for priesthood or single life and so on. But then when I read through the article, I came to realize that this young man, he went into so much of depth into understanding what he's getting into, that he came to realize that a Catholic marriage was never about himself. It was about his spouse, about the person that he was getting married to. It was about a vocation, and it never did begin, neither did it end with him. And so the title "Marriage is Not for Me" was apt and right. He was choosing marriage, but he came to realize that he was not getting into marriage for himself, and that had a huge impact on my life. And from then on, from that time, I came to understand what the church speaks about marriage, and came to realize it's not really, when we ask someone a question as to why you're getting married, and if they say it's a whole lot of reason that they say, and it involves a whole lot of them, I came to realize that I think that is the beginning of all the problems that are there in their marriage. And once they get rid of that, and once they start looking at a different perspective, start looking at their marriage from the perspective of their spouse, perspective of living their life entirely for their spouse, then they truly will have the joy, satisfaction, fulfillment, and living out the marriage as it should be. So that is my experience of why I've seen marriages having problems. We've seen a whole lot of issues in the community. A whole lot of couples coming to us and speaking to us about struggles that they have. Not necessarily with large ones like what Father mentioned about alcoholism and money problems and so on. A whole lot of them have to do with emotional connect with each other, struggles between themselves. Because inherently deep within us, each of us are selfish. And we want that in our marriage, we want to find that we want to do things for ourselves. Be it simple things as taking care of our children, or washing dishes, folding clothes. We just don't want to do that. We don't want to stay up late and take care of our babies. When I'm sleeping, even me for that matter, when we had our first baby, if the baby would cry, I would just turn and wait for Millie to take care of the baby. So things like that. Inherently there is that selfishness within us that we don't want to live our life for our spouse. We want to live it for ourselves. So it's not easy to break that. But once we start breaking that, we see the fruit of our marriages. We see the beauty of the marriage. It's no longer about just living out the challenges of the struggles that we have, but it's about growing in that beauty of what we have gotten of that vocation that we have entered into. So that's what my experience has been.
Yeah, and that's really beautiful. So, Father, those are very relevant problems that women are facing. But when you look at the statistics in India, at least, men seem to be the ones initiating divorce. So, why do you think that is?
Well, You're right,
Rishika.
Rishika. But what you're telling me is about the statistics of the whole of India. What I'm actually dealing with is the statistics of those Christians in India. But still, they are not very much different from one another. Why is it that in India, more than in the West, men start the divorce and the woman doesn't start it, as it's usually found in the West? In the West, the women start the divorce because they get a lot of money out of it.
Right.
They have made arrangements and she can demand maybe even 40% of the man's wealth. She'll get it. And who's going to wait for the man to come and do? Man may say, I'm not interested. So she starts it, the divorce proceedings. In India, that problem is really not there. The judge will just decide, how much shall I give? How much are you earning? And he decides 1,000, 2,000 rupees a month, which is just nothing when compared to the real expenses of a family. So on the other side, why do men start the divorce proceedings? It's essentially a society reason. The man, when he does not have his wife, will have to start living with another woman if he doesn't have a divorce. And the whole of his society, those who are with him, will start questioning, how come you are living with somebody? The church will question him and say, no more Holy Communion for you, no more confession for you. So what should I do? You have to marry another person. Then what do I have to do? You go to the church, get an annulment from that marriage, and then come and marry somebody else. And the man is more eager and he needs to marry much more than the woman wants to marry. A woman can say, I'll live separate, I'll live single. I don't need another man in my life. I've already had one and that's enough for me. But a man doesn't say that. He says, I want another lady. I want someone to be part of my life. And I have to have children. A woman is not scared that after a divorce, she will have children through somebody. Very, very rarely. So the man wants to marry. Society is forcing him to marry. The church is forcing him to marry. And therefore, he has to come to the church and say, I want an annulment from my first marriage. And very often it happens like that, but it's not always like that, because when the parents see that their young daughter has already have a failed marriage, they force her also to go to the church and get an annulment, because otherwise we cannot accept you living with another man. So constraints are there, but the girl can more confidently say, I can live separate. But the man usually cannot say like that. Quite often it's the man who may be the cause for the breakup of the marriage. Then it becomes a problem in the court, because he will have to make all false allegations on the woman to get a civil divorce. He has to make all false allegations in the church to make a civil divorce. Because in the church, we ask him to place his hand on the Bible and tell what I'm telling is the truth, the whole truth. And therefore, they force the girl's family to bring the girl, and the annulment takes place.
So, Father, you've given very interesting points about how women would find the need to look for separation. But what do you think would be some of the causes that men look to separate from their spouses? One of
the main reasons is infidelity.
Right.
See, men and women can accept many of the problems that they have with one another. But neither a man can accept his wife being unfaithful to him, or the wife accept that the husband is unfaithful to her. And so one of the very big reasons is unfaithfulness. Unfortunately, with this unfaithfulness, you cannot pinpoint this is unfaithfulness. It has got a very, very big ambit. Holding another person's hand can be taken as unfaithfulness. A friendship kiss can be called as unfaithfulness. Only the last part is, okay, you're having a conjugal relationship. But all these other things, if you put them as unfaithfulness, It's impossible for a woman to live in society with men. She has to relate to them, especially if you're in a corporate and you're working along with men, it becomes very difficult. There are so many cases I have seen where the man puts almost a spy to go and spy on her, with whom she's talking, where she's going, where she's coming. He takes her phone and then keeps on finding out who are the ones who sent messages to you, to whom did you send messages. And very innocuous messages can make him go mad.
Right.
There was a greeting sent by a girl, by another boy to a man's wife. It was a Christmas greeting. And he said everything, and in the end he said, with love and kisses. Can you believe it broke the marriage? Because the man said, why should he kiss you? Why should he send love and kisses to you? Well, abroad, if you didn't put that, it would look like you're an uncouth person. Here, even that. And I know of another case where the girl was leaving her home and family and coming to Bangalore from Chennai. And one of her cousins gave her a cheek-to-cheek kiss. It's just a cheek kiss. The travel that they had from Chennai to Bangalore on the train was enough. They broke the marriage. They came back here and he asked for an annulment. He said, no, how can, in front of me he's giving a cheek-to-cheek kiss. What do I know what's happening behind me? So the suspicion and these kind of very minor things can get into a man's mind and really turn it upside down. Very often it's the men who are unfaithful, not the women. Because men can be unfaithful and get away with it. Women, if they are unfaithful, they cannot get away with it. The worst comes to the worst, they conceive. So, I would say that men, when they come for asking for an annulment, usually it will be, my wife is unfaithful to me. He will bring photographs, he will bring emails, he will bring phone recordings. Well, other reasons why a man could come for the wife, against the wife, would be also for some kind of psychological reasons, trauma. She may not, her side also, as I told for the man, she too may be very, very short-tempered. She too can be having a lack of maturity of mind to be able to see what is the truth. She too may have a excessive possessiveness, excessive suspicion, etc. So we as human beings, we can say that all of us can have all the problems that are existing. In this case, it would be a man who has it. In another case, it would be a woman who has it. Right. Very often, men cannot tolerate and cannot bear it. So they have to come. Women grin and bear it most of the time. My husband drinks, what can I do? My husband gets angry, what to do? Okay, I'll have to stay away from the missiles that come on me during the supper time. Okay, I have to somehow, okay, I can't go to my parents. Okay, forget it. I may see them in church one day. That's enough for me. The woman has got a lot of toleration power to tolerate and accept. The man does not have very much at all. So if there is something that the man sees in the woman and it is beyond his capacity to accept, he comes to the tribunal. So there are, but then I'm telling you only these cases are like only about 20% of marriages which fail. But there are 80% of marriages where people accept one another, love one another. If the divorces are showing a higher scale in the tabulation that you gave, right, it's not necessarily because of Christian marriages. Right. Christian marriages are very strong. That the reason is because we give them marriage instruction before the marriage. Well, after being in the tribunal for so many years, I wrote a book, Marriage Instruction. And I told the parish priest, ask them to buy one book and keep it at home. With all the excitement of getting married, they remember 10% of what you told them.
That's true.
And so how do I get them to know all that the church wants them to know? So I've given this book on instruction. And in this, a lot of what couples should know of what are the things that you want in marriage. Preetham said, I wanted a wife, for my good. I shouldn't seek my good. I should seek the other person's good always. He's correct. But in canon law, when you go to what is marriage, canon 1055 explains a graphical, picturesque explanation. It says, the ends of marriage are the good of the spouses. I should seek your good. You should seek my good.
Yes.
the good of the spouses. Secondly, the good of children. I should be able to, I should accept the fact that you want children. She should accept the fact that he wants children. Then the good of faithfulness. That is, the good is my marriage, my wife will be faithful to me. Don't think that's the truth in all marriages of the world. There are many countries where they allow more than one wife.
Yeah.
But in the Catholic marriage, the good of faithfulness is that I know my wife will be faithful to me. There are many boys, many girls who say, "No, don't talk rubbish about my husband. I know who he is. I know he would not do such a thing." And the husband also tells that about his wife. The good of having a faithful relationship. The good of a permanent relationship.
Yeah.
In other marriages, there could be, I want you, I take you. I don't want you, I divorce you. For a drop of a hat, you can divorce a person.
Yeah.
But in the Catholic Church, you have, no, for any reason, you cannot divorce your wife. So, except the ones which I told you, no, that is when the consent is flawed. So, there is the good of spouses, there's the good of children, the good of indissolubility, the good of permanence and good of fidelity. So, these are good, certain goods. And there's also one thing which is not very much known, the good of the sacrament. You know, the good of the sacrament is, when I get married to a person, an abundance of grace is poured into our hearts. A sacrament is a channel of God's grace. And this pouring an abundance of grace by God continues all through their life. Preetham and Melissa married 18 years. Even today, when they kiss one another with true love, God's blessings flow into them. Even now, when they hold each other's hand with a lot of love in their hearts, excitement in their hearts, God's blessing is flowing into them. People don't realize it. The good of the sacrament means it remains all through your life till the last day that you are together. God is showering His graces on you. So you get the good of the sacrament. It is not there for non-baptized people. But for baptized, it is called as, it's a sacramental marriage. When you say it's a sacramental marriage, that means all that I do is an occasion of grace. There are only two sacraments like that. It's marriage for them, ordination for me. So whenever I exercise my priestly ministry, God is pouring His blessings into me. What He told is good. Yes, I have to seek the good of the other, but the church brings in all this to make it complete. All these are things for which I get married.
So, Father, there's another question that people have is, why should the state or the church be involved in my marriage? I am with another person, I want to decide. So why should somebody else come in between? So what do you have to say to that?
A whole lot of the laws that we have, a whole lot of rights that are accrued to an individual in terms of property, in terms of maintenance, in terms of well-being, in terms of societal benefits and so on, are attached to marriage currently.
So Preetham, you raised a very interesting point where you said that the state now accepts live-in as a way of being. It's equivalent to marriage, right? It's accepted that now. So if now I as a young person am seeing how difficult marriages can be. I'm looking at my peers and saying people are getting divorced, people are separating, and it's a very difficult way of being, having to compromise for another person. And you have all these other options of live-in or not, or living apart from each other and just still being married. Then why would somebody who's even discerning marriage consider marriage as an option? Why wouldn't you just perhaps go in for something more convenient, more comfortable? Well, if it's not working, you move and you can find something that makes you happy. So what do you think is your opinion on perhaps dating or exploring relationships before marriage?
In the context of what you asked, about dating, something that we actually do in our community, where we have a ministry of singles, and invariably there are a whole lot of singles who end up having relationships with one another in the ministry itself. It's a natural process that it is bound to happen, and something that is beautiful if you look at it in the right sense. And what we actually do is we go ahead and lead them in that relationship in a life of chastity. We get them to an understanding that it is not wrong to have that attraction to one another. It's actually beautiful. It's a gift of God to be attracted to one another. It's awesome. But how you're going to be living out that attraction, that sensuality that you experience with one another, is what really matters and what is your walk to spirituality.
Yeah, if I could add something on what is the theology of the body that we are all talking of.
Thank you very much for joining us on another episode at Heart Rock Cafe. We'll be taking a short break, but we will continue this conversation in the next episode where we talk about if marriage is a failed institution. Meanwhile, please subscribe, comment, and leave a like if you like this video. And if you're interested in more information on discerning marriage, then check out RMC's other program called That Catholic Couple. The link will be in the description for you to check out. Take care.